We've just uncovered some shocking new details about the deadly political attack over the weekend. Details so chilling. Wait until you see what authorities revealed this morning. And then a little bit later in the show, we're going to break down the president's fiery new push to ramp up deportations in sanctuary cities. The backlash is already sparking. But first, a quick update on the Alex Padilla fiasco, because he said something over the weekend that made my jaw hit the floor. CNN handed the California senator a spotlight after his stunt that he pulled at Secretary Kristy Noem's press conference, where he took several steps towards a woman, tried to hijack her mic, and talked over her. Now imagine if a Republican man did that to a Democrat woman. Mainstream media would be calling it mansplaining. But since it's the other way around, CNN was more curious about the calls for Kristi Noem to resign. This is wild. Watch this.
Several of your fellow Democrats say that Secretary Noem should resign. Is that where you are?
Look, that's maybe not my focus right now, but I do think there's some serious questions. How does the cabinet secretary not know the senator from California when she steps foot into Los Angeles? She came through the Center for Confirmation at one point, and certainly, how does the Secretary of Homeland Security not know how to de-escalate a situation? It's because she can't or because they don't want to.
Senator Padilla's complaint that Secretary Noem didn't recognize him is absolutely absurd. Noem leads a department of 240,000. She handles national security threats, not name tags for senators. And if he wanted to be recognized, maybe try acting like a senator instead of behaving like a protester. Now, the comment that really got me fired up was him blaming her for not de-escalating the chaos that he caused. That's like breaking into somebody's home and then blaming them for calling the cops. It makes absolutely no sense. All right, we've given him enough time. Let's move on to the political rampage that has the entire country in shock. The suspect, Vance Luther Belter, is in custody and facing multiple federal charges. Now, his bail was set at $5 million after allegedly murdering 2 people and attempting to take many more lives. For just a quick second, let's contrast that with President Trump's $454 million bond in a civil case from New York's Letitia James. This clearly shows you how upside down our justice system is. You commit a double murder and get bail. You fight back politically and get bankrupted. If you agree with that, hit that like button for me and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure you hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Now, before I show you a shocking video involving the wife of the suspected Minnesota shooter, I want to walk you through the chilling timeline that investigators just revealed. Belter's first stop? The home of Senator John Hoffman and his wife.
Senator Hoffman had a security camera. I've seen the footage from that camera, and it is chilling. Belter knocked on Senator Hoffman's front door and repeatedly shouted, "This is the police, open the door." Senator Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, came to the door. When they opened the door, Belter shined the flashlight in their faces and said there had been a shooting reported in the house. Belter asked if they had any weapons. When Belter lowered his flashlight, which he had shined in their face, they realized that he was not a police officer. They shouted out, "You're not a cop. You're not a police officer." Belter then announced, "This is a robbery," and forced himself into their home. When Senator Hoffman attempted to push Belter out and stop him from entering his home, Belter shot him repeatedly. Belter then shot Miss Hoffman repeatedly. Belter fled the scene, and the Hoffman's daughter called 911. Unfortunately, the Hoffmans survived, although they remain hospitalized.
And here's where my jaw hit the ground. Listen to this unexpected twist in this haunting story, and get ready, because it's just the first of 2.
After shooting Senator Hoffman and his wife, Belter traveled to the home of another Minnesota state representative in Maple Grove, Minnesota. Video surveillance showed that Belter rang the doorbell at the state representative's house at approximately 2:24 a.m. on Friday night. Again, he was dressed as a law enforcement officer, wearing a tactical vest and body armor, carrying a handgun and a flashlight, and wearing that same hyper-realistic silicone mask. Again, the images, as you can see on the screen, are haunting. Now, fortunately, the state representative was not home. She and her family were gone on vacation. and so Belter left.
That representative has an angel on her shoulders. All right, let's take a look at another shocking revelation. Belter then traveled to the home of another Minnesota state senator. He parked on the street and he was confronted by an officer who was dispatched to the home to do a wellness check after police received word of the shooting at Senator Hoffman's house. Here's how that encounter played out.
The New Hope police officer pulled up next to Belter in his car, rolled down her window, and attempted to speak with him. Belter did not respond. According to the officer, he just sat there and stared straight ahead. So the New Hope police officer, who had been dispatched to the scene, proceeded to the state senator's home, and she waited for other law enforcement to arrive. When they did, by the time they did, Belter had left the scene.
It's unfortunate that Belter wasn't stopped there, because here's the point in the story where a family's life is forever changed. He went on to his fourth home, Representative Melissa Hortman's house. Now, he parked his SUV in the driveway, and as he was making his way to the front door, he was confronted by police who were, again, dispatched for a wellness check.
When they arrived at the scene, they saw Belter's black SUV parked in the driveway with the emergency lights flashing, and they saw Belter standing in front of the house several feet from the door. When Belter saw the officers get out of the car, he drew his weapon and began firing. He rushed into the house through the front door, firing into it. He repeatedly fired into the house, and when he entered, he murdered Representative Hortman and her husband, Mark.
Officers exchanged gunfire with Belter, but unfortunately, he was able to escape out the back of the house. Inside his car, they found a target list, which I'm sure you've heard about, and authorities confirmed over 45 Minnesota state and federal officials were on that list. We also learned that he researched his victims and their families, and he conducted surveillance on their homes. He even texted his family during the manhunt. Listen to this.
Something we learned here also, that during the then flurry manhunt that took about 43 hours searching for Belter, Belter allegedly texted his family members saying in this text, this is from the criminal complaint, "Dad went to war last night. I don't want to say more because I don't want to implicate anyone."
Speaking of his family, his wife Jennifer, along with several other relatives, were actually pulled over by law enforcement while the manhunt was underway for her husband. Watch this.
Law enforcement made a traffic stop involving a vehicle carrying several relatives of Vance Belter, including his wife. We have talked to an eyewitness who says about a dozen law enforcement squads converged on the vehicle and remained on the scene for 2 to 3 hours. We are also told by several of our sources the vehicle contained a weapon, ammunition, cash, and passports. Now, to our knowledge, no one in that group has been arrested, just detained for questioning.
Now, here's where things start to look very bad for Governor Tim Walz. Jennifer Belter used to work for Walz back in 2010. And Vance Belter himself, Walz personally appointed him to a Minnesota workforce board in 2019. This was a man once trusted and empowered by the governor of the state. And now, that same man is accused of stalking, shooting, and murdering public officials in cold blood. So what has Tim Walz done since the news broke? He has reportedly deleted past tweets about Belter. That raises a real question. What is he trying to hide? And how many other radicals have quietly been elevated under his administration? Think about that one for a minute. Now on to another explosive headline. President Trump's direct call for ICE to ramp up deportations in sanctuary cities. President Trump posted on Truth Social a direct order to ICE asking them to ramp up deportation efforts in sanctuary cities such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. Here's the president being asked about it this morning.
You did a post last night where you said you want ICE to really target Democrats.
Yeah, I want them to focus on the cities, because the cities are where you really have what's called sanctuary cities, and that's where the people are. I look at New York, I look at Chicago. I mean, you got a really bad governor in Chicago and a bad mayor, but the governor's probably the worst in the country, Pritzker. But I look at how that city has been overrun by criminals, and New York and LA, look at LA, those people weren't from LA, they weren't from California, most of those people, many of those people, and yeah, that's a focus. Biden allowed 21 million people to come into our country, and they think they're going to use them to vote.
As I'm sure you can imagine, Democrats are expressing their outrage over the mass deportations. Here's LA's Mayor Karen Bass over the weekend.
You hear people talking in restaurants all over about how they don't want to go out anymore. You have people that won't come out of their house because they don't want to buy groceries. You have churches that are on hybrid because people are afraid to go to churches. Why? Because there was an arrest outside a church. So all of this has created a feeling of fear and terror around our city.
Funny how selective the outrage is, because just a few years ago, Democrats were arresting pastors for holding services during lockdowns. I'm pretty sure it's hypocritical to condemn enforcement actions against undocumented immigrants while supporting heavy-handed restrictions that infringed on the religious freedoms of law-abiding citizens. See, they claim Trump's acting like a king, but I'm pretty sure it was their party who forced people to get vaccinated or be fired. They're the ones who shut down small businesses. They're the ones who forced family members to die alone, and I'm pretty sure it was the left who was setting up snitch lines to tell on your neighbors if they had more than 10 people over at their house. So who's the real king here? Here's how Donald Trump Jr. responded to the No King protests.
There are no kings in America thanks to the United States Army, which we were celebrating the 250th anniversary of, on Saturday. That's exactly why we have no kings. So it seemed like a little bit of a ridiculous protest, especially coming from a party who seems to anoint their leaders. They don't run them through a process. They don't do anything. I mean, Hillary, I guess, wanted to be anointed again. She certainly wanted to be the queen. The people saw how that worked out the first time for her. They realized that she's the least likable person, not just in American politics, but perhaps in the world. And, didn't anoint her. So I guess that made her a little bit upset. But they did anoint Kamala Harris without going through a democratic process. So, like all things, Benny, the left is really good at sort of projecting. They accuse the other side of doing all of the things that they're doing. So, yeah, we have no kings in America. We still don't have any kings in America. We haven't had any kings in America for 250 years. And again, that was thanks to the United States Army.
He makes an excellent point there. And while we're on the subject of these No King protests, North Carolina Representative Julie Von Hafen is under fire after sharing a protest image showing Trump's decapitated head with the caption reading, quote, "In these difficult times, some cuts may be necessary." North Carolina GOP is now calling for her resignation. Shocking. And shocking, too, how bringing down the temperature sure didn't last that long for Democrats. Now, before I completely switch gears on you, I do want to show you real quick how New York Mayor Eric Adams is reacting to the idea of mass deportations by the Trump administration. Watch this.
The overwhelming number of Democrats in this city, they believe with me that 79% stated that if you commit a crime and you are undocumented after you serve your time, you should be deported. 79%. They believe in me in supporting our police. They believe in pro-business. They believe in not having a revolving door criminal justice system.
That's the kind of common sense most Americans agree with. Now, finally, Trump met privately with Canada's Prime Minister to discuss trade, though the two have very different approaches.
I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something, hopefully.
So I will continue to follow this meeting and see what they were willing to agree on, if anything. I'll bring you those new developments as they come in. In the meantime, check out this next video where I break down the shocking connection between the Minnesota shooter and Governor Tim Walz. I know we touched on it a little bit today, but I broke down a lot more information in yesterday's video that'll kind of show you the reason why Tim Walz is probably erasing some past tweets. So go ahead, click on that video now and join me over there.